This is just about as glamorous it gets in college football. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, teaming up with SG1 Sports to bring you previews and predictions for Week 13. It is USC and Notre Dame. Huge stakes in this one for both teams to a certain extent. USC, a paltry 5-6, have not met expectations. Therefore, they need to win this one just to reach postseason play. And for Notre Dame, they are playing for an undisputed spot in the National College Football Playoffs at 11-0. This is the 90th edition between these two, the greatest cross-sectional rivalry in college football. USC has won 11 of the past 16. Notre Dame, ironically, has the same record, 11-5, when they are undefeated, taking on USC. The last time that happened was in 2012. Manti Te'o and Notre Dame completed the deal 22-13 at the LA Coliseum and finished off at 12-0 before they faced Alabama in the BCS championship game. All right, Notre Dame 47-37 in the all-time series with 5 ties. Looking at some of the historic games recently, of course, these teams go back all the way to the 1920s. But again, more recently, Anthony Davis in 1974, Notre Dame led this game 24-0. And back in 1974, 24-0 might as well have been 94-0. Anthony Davis ran wild for USC as the Trojans scored 55 points in 17 minutes to win in 55-24 at the LA Coliseum. In 1975, just a year later, it was Joe Montana's third start. Think, maybe the greatest quarterback of all time. His third start, but USC won the game 24-17. In 1977, Dan Devine, not fulfilling expectations or meeting the standards set by Ara Parseghian, was disappointing fans with 2 consecutive 3-loss seasons and was under the gun after losing to Ole Miss. Broke out the green jerseys for the first time in forever. And the first time in modern times since Notre Dame roughed up John Robinson's USC Trojans 49-19, inspired by the green jerseys, of course. In 1979, Charles White, en route to a Heisman Trophy, and of course these two schools, along with Ohio State, have produced the most Heisman Trophy winners. Charles White, 261 yards rushing in 1979, en route to a win, a big win for USC. Between 1982 and 85, 82 and 95, Lou Holtz was the coach for most of that time. Jerry Faust at the beginning of that run. Notre Dame won all those games. They won 11 consecutive contests against USC. A big matchup in 1988, the only time the two have played as number 1 and number 2 in the nation. Notre Dame won at 27-10 over Rodney Peete. Lou Holtz, sticking to his guns, held out 2 of his more popular and better players in Tony Brooks and also Ricky Watters. Remember Ricky Watters from Super Bowl fame with the San Francisco 49ers. Both of them left back in South Bend, and Notre Dame still won 27-10. From 2002 to 2009, though, USC under Pete Carroll dominated the series with 9 consecutive wins. Of course, most of those were routes, but the game that stands out, Brady Quinn against Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart and that group in 2005 that marched on as one of the most dominant regular season teams in college football history before losing to Texas. The Bush push resulted in USC winning at Notre Dame 34-31. And, of course, in 2017, Sam Darnold was ambushed, as were the Trojans, in a game between number 13 and number 11 in South Bend last year, as the Irish won it 49-14. All right, let's bring you up to date. Ian Book is number 2 in the nation in pass completion percentage at 72.6%. The Notre Dame offense has been completely different with him at the helm. Although, of course, Brandon Wimbush a couple weeks back against Florida State had to fill in, and he looked much improved over his 49% passing rating and percentage from last year and how he played in the first 3 games of Notre Dame's season, in which they only scored 22, 24, and 24 points. But with Ian Book at the controls, what Notre Dame's able to do is obviously take pressure off the running game, number 1, and they're also able to utilize one of the best wide receiver corps in college football. You've got Miles Boykin. He's the best. not just statistically, he's the best player, the best athlete with the most skills. 51 catches and 8 touchdowns. Now, you've got 3 other guys in Chris Finke. You've got Chase Claypool and Elise Mack, the tight end. All those guys get the ball about equally. They all have between 33 and 43 catches, between 10 and 13 yards per reception. Notre Dame has recruited exceptionally well at wide receiver and have a number of playmakers that they just have not had in the past. They've had one guy, maybe 2 guys, like a Michael Floyd in particular. All right, Dexter Williams, home run hitter deluxe. Just brings a different dimension to this team that they didn't have last year with Josh Adams at running back. 6.7 yards per carry, 11 touchdowns. What shouldn't be underestimated is the emergence of Jafar Armstrong in backing him up and providing a bit of fresh legs for both Dexter Williams and Jafar Armstrong, who is extremely capable. All right, so that's the Notre Dame offense. And consider Dexter Williams and his home run hitting ability against a defense in USC that talent-wise should be a top 10 to 15 defense, but it's nowhere near that. And last week against Josh Kelly with Wilton Speight at quarterback, so UCLA limited in the passing game. They should have loaded up against the run, USC should have, and they still gave up 289 yards rushing to UCLA last week, and this is what Dexter Williams is facing this year. Cam Smith most likely playing in his final game at USC. He's been a tremendous Pac-12 first-team player there at linebacker for USC, and if they can't pull off the upset, this is it for Cam Smith. Porter Gustin was the most productive player, the most talented player in the front 7. He's been lost for the last several games, so he's gone, and nobody has really stepped in to make those disruptive plays for USC. Biggie Marshall is one of the best at the corner position, is a physical corner. Christian Rector as well. Outstanding players on the USC defense. The recruiting rankings would point to USC possibly being a little bit better on the roster than Notre Dame, but the production has been nowhere close to it. Now, if we look at Notre Dame's defense against USC's offense, wow. This is a top 20 defense in Notre Dame in points per game given up, yards per game given up, a number 2 in pass efficiency defense. They just played a Syracuse team that is ripping up the ACC for 40 to 50 points per game. Sure, against some marginal defenses, but the Pitt defense is really good. They played Notre Dame very close in South Bend. Well, Syracuse tore them up. In particular, they've played extremely well the entire season until they made it to Yankee Stadium in that pinstripe game against Notre Dame. They only scored 3 points, 234 yards of total offense, 6 sacks for Notre Dame in the game, and 11 tackles for loss against Eric Dungy and Tommy DeVito and company for the Orange. In the first 11 possessions for Syracuse against that Notre Dame defense, when the game was still in play, the last couple of possessions didn't matter. They had 8 punts and 3 interceptions in 11 possessions against Notre Dame's defense. Notre Dame has 6 players on defense, and we talk Notre Dame football right here at SG1 Sports and at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, each and every week. So we run down the names each and every week. Tavon Coney, Julian Love, Jerry Tillery, on down the line. They have stars all over the place, guys that will play in the NFL. Coney has 100 tackles on the season. Notre Dame spreads out the productivity. It's not like they've got a couple guys, and if they lose them, a la a Nick Bosa, then the defense takes a huge hit. 6 players have at least 6 tackles for loss. 6 players have at least 3 sacks for Notre Dame. They take on JT Daniels. We knew it was going to be a rough ride following the game against UNLV. He had to go on the road to face Stanford and Texas, and it's been difficult ever since. 13 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, completing 57% of his passes, but he is getting better. Not at the rate that I expected and many did, thinking that once we got to that game, even though USC might be out of it in regards to a college football playoff, that they'd be vying for a Pac-12 South division, that they might be 7-4, 8-3, but Daniels would be much better, a la Sam Darnold 2 years ago, who progressed throughout the season his freshman year. But not so much for JT Daniels. But he is better. He threw for 337 last week against UCLA. but missed a ton of throws and threw a couple bad interceptions. What's alarming for USC is that they could not run against UCLA. And UCLA is number 106 out of 130 FBS teams, number 106 in rush defense. And that's after USC couldn't run against them. And the 104th total defense in UCLA did pretty well against USC. Aka Cedric Ware is not a special back. He's a workmanlike back, has had a fine career at USC, but he's a senior. He's playing because Stephen Carr is not able to. 6.8 per carry, though, is pretty special out of him. But he couldn't. He's had most of his big games Ware against bad teams like Arizona and Oregon State. Otherwise, his statistics really deflate from there. Probably the most talented unit on the field for USC is at wide receiver. Michael Pittman's a great player. Tyler Vaughn's, of course. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who was J.T. Daniels' favorite target, coming from the same high school at Mater Dei. Really looking for him the first several weeks of the season. Now Daniels spreads it around. Those three players are exceptional. They are pros. So here's the interesting psychological factor. Of course, the pressure should be on Notre Dame. They're playing for a college football playoff appearance. If they lose, then they got to start hoping, because they're not going to have the conference championship or the 13th data point. For USC, they just want to get to postseason play. How motivated will they be? Well, they're going to be on national TV. I don't know how much they really care about going to a bowl game, but do they really want to be embarrassed on national TV? There are reports out there. There's feedback that Clay Helton has lost the locker room. That doesn't necessarily seem like a stretch, that he would have lost the locker room. There were indications at on the sideline at the UCLA game, guys dancing and having a good time while they were blowing the game in the final minutes and so forth. Yes, Notre Dame will feel some pressure, but they've got full 3.5 hours to work it out. It's a road game for Notre Dame, so they've had to go from San Diego playing Navy all the way across to New York City to play Syracuse and back across the country to play USC. Yes, the Trojans have the talent to make this a game. There's no question. There's not a talent gap between these two teams, but you've got one team that's laser-focused, playing well almost every week. You've got another team that continues to mystify, and a quarterback who should be further along in his progress than he is. Notre Dame gets through the nerves. They beat USC 27-19. Those of you who like to play a dollar or two against the spread, take it for what it's worth. It's about a 10-point spread right now. This one's going to be right around that place, because USC, if they've got some pride, they can play with Notre Dame athletically. Irish win at 27-19. My pick here at SG1 Sports. Would love to get your pick. Just leave it down in the comments section, and anything else regarding this matchup, the tradition, any memories, any thoughts about USC, Notre Dame, maybe Clay Helton's final game in Los Angeles with the Trojans. Right here at SG1 Sports. We will see you next time.